Welcome back, everybody. Another Distributed with TED Magazine podcast. I am Scott Costa, the publisher of TED Magazine. I have a great guest with me right there. That's David Kolmer. Folks, you probably don't even know him, so we're pulling back the curtain here at NAED just a little bit. Let me tell you, David's an instructional designer here at NAED. He works insanely hard. I'm bragging on you, David. Sorry, you're stuck with it.
No,
he works insanely hard behind the scenes to create the education programs that you're using, that your HR people are buying and having your employees use and work and learn from and get better at what they're doing. And it comes from that guy over there because he's the guy who's really digging into it. And we've got a new one for you. CEP has been updated, upgraded. We were talking before I started hitting the record button. It's not easier, but it's easier to complete. We're going to get into that in a minute. But first, David, welcome to the first time ever. Welcome to the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast. You ready to roll?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Really appreciate the opportunity.
All right, great. Here we go. So take me just to the beginning. What made you say we want to do some upgrades and some updates to CEP to make it more user-friendly for our NAED members?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Honestly, we've moved away from some partners that were content developers, and we've moved more to a content provider. And that's much like any learning artifact, like an e-learning, any SCORM file. So an audio book or e-learning, like I said. So now we have a content provider, which means we can pull from content from multiple developers. So now that we have this library, there's over 80,000, maybe 100,000 learning artifacts that we can pull from now. And we said, hey, look, there's a really diverse range of content here. We should start using this. So in addition to CEP, we also have new skill set bundles. So, if you wanted to maybe beef up your HR or learning more about data analytics, executive development. I can't even get it out. I'm so excited. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunities here to grow your people.
So let's get into that then, because now we're opening up a can of worms here, and I don't want people to freak out or anything. When you get into our learning modules, when you get into our learning sessions, you're not going to come upon, again, 100,000 videos. You've done the work to narrow it down to the good ones.
That's
correct.
Take
me into that process maybe a little bit. With CEP, maybe some other things. You have to look at everything. How did you make the decisions that went into making CEP what it is today?
Yeah, fantastic question. So I recently actually did study instructional design. I got a master's in that. It took me 8 short years to just slowly kind of get through that. I got kids. So leveraging that, I think that really is the future of learning and development. They call it content curation, right? Like, why reinvent the wheel? We already have 100,000 e-learnings on the growth mindset. So why do I need to make a new e-learning on growth mindset? The process really was going out and saying, okay, first of all, does this file work? Sometimes like the next buttons don't make sense, or the e-learning's broken. So that's kind of the first criteria. Second, is it aesthetically appealing? Is it nice to look at? And then, are the learning objectives really what we want? Are we going to cover the content that really is going to serve the members of NAED? So those were the 3 main things that I did, right? It works, it's aesthetically pleasing, it's nice, right? It's engaging to go through, and it has the learning hits that we want.
And so then we decided to put this into what we're calling a bundle. And maybe you need to define that for folks so they don't get confused by what it is that when you sign up to take one of these courses, what happens. So explain to me what a bundle is, and maybe get into a little bit of what this particular bundle will do.
Okay, yeah. So a lot of developers will, instead of just having a course that's 10 hours long, right? No one really wants that. They're going to do more of the micro learning type thing and then bundle those courses together. So bundles can mean anything from maybe like a 1 hour amount of learning that has 10 5-minute videos, or it can be 10 hours or 20 hours of seat time for the learner. And this really can be anything from video to e-learning, as well as readings, audio. And then what we did here is we started taking those bundles and kind of moving them around, maybe lumping them together. And that's basically what CEP is in the final product, is 10 sets of bundles that really work together and really gear people up for a better sales experience.
So let's not freak some people out.
Okay.
If that's okay. And let's talk into Because I think it's an important part. Nobody wants to be like, oh gosh, it sounds like, we're eating an elephant here, one bite
Yeah.
and it's going to take forever. And
No.
one of the things that I think you really made sure that we focused on when we're trying to get the message out about the new CEP is something that you called cognitive overload. Explain that and how this pushes away from being too much, too fast, too soon, too crazy.
Sure. Yeah. So cognitive overload theory is simply discussing how we intake information. So it's basically looking at our senses. Obviously, we have sight, we have sound. Those are really the two big ones that we pull information in with. And then the tactile, using it, right? Using your hands, speaking it. That really is how we kind of more reinforce the knowledge that we've pulled in. And it kind of touches on something called like the learning styles, which there's no scientific evidence behind whatsoever. So we've kind of made up this idea somehow. Either maybe a school teacher somewhere in Wisconsin, I don't know who did this, but they made up this idea that people learn better with their eyes or their ears, or there's no weight to that. But what there is weight to is you want it balanced. So if I go out and read a book, generally speaking, I'll remember 15 to 30% of that book. That's it. But if I do that and then listen to the audiobook, that'll jump me up from 30% to 50% knowledge retention. And I'm using these, right, like kind of a range of percentages because it's not repeatable. But the idea is here, if you hear it and then see it and then you use it, you incorporate it into your life, you're going to remember a lot more of it, right? So the whole reason of using cognitive load theory is, okay, first let's just watch a video because videos are fun. Everyone likes video. So we always front load all the topics with some really nice video. It's very thought provoking, just some seasoned experts and talking heads saying, hey, here's some ideas, some analogies to help start planting those mental seeds, right? Then after that, okay, let's do an e-learning. Maybe it has a knowledge check on it. Let's see how much we're retaining. And then at the end of that, okay, now here's some audiobook or some readings that you can do to kind of cement that knowledge. Okay. And the final step we can talk about later. I think you wanted to bring that up with the manager guide a little bit later.
I want to bring it up right now, actually.
Oh,
it's
perfect.
funny you should say that because this is exactly what I want to jump into.
Oh, good.
Breaking it down into pieces. And I want you to explain it to me. This isn't just for, hey, take, hey, salesperson, counter person, whoever it might happen to be, take CEP. There's also a manager's guide in here. So let's get into that first. Explain what that is and how that's going to help the process of not just going through CEP, but actually retaining and maintaining sales focus and sales expertise and sales results. Yeah.
So we have multiple competencies is what we've listed them at. That's what the member wanted, was to have these organized by competency. And from my perspective as an instructional designer, I feel like each competency kind of presents maybe a different approach to sales, right? We have different learner types, different kinds of people. Maybe some people are more analytical, some people are more socially inclined, some people really want to just push features. So each competency kind of has that. But then what's really important is the social aspect, right? We want to be socially connected with the customer. And so the way to cement the learning is also socially. So we're social animals. We want things like this, you and me just talking. That's why podcasts are so popular, because we're just hanging out, right? We're just having a lunch here, chatting away. So we tried our best to build that into CEP by really simplifying the manager guide. Okay, the previous manager guide was, okay, tick, 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 just check all the boxes. And it was exhausting. No one wants to look at that. Did you read like module 1.5? No. Open-ended questions. What did you think about this idea of social selling? Or what did you think about that concept of active listening? Let's talk about it. And the manager is encouraged to just take the employee out to a coffee, sit down for 15 minutes in a common area or their office and just chat. Just, what did you think about it? Or did you have any ideas of how to implement that into your current sales process?
So the manager's guide isn't like a test. I don't want to, again, you want to get a certification.
I think it kind of was.
But this isn't like let's make sure we're clear. The manager's guide isn't like a test. It's just a sort of a management skill set that you should and could use to make sure that things are going forward. Is that a way to describe it?
Yeah. Definitely. And I think it's also important to punch that, like, this is how you're really going to make change, right? So you pay for this program. Do you want your salespeople to just keep doing what they've always done? Right? The value drive really is that conversation that you're going to have, because again, that's going to pump up that knowledge retention above 70%.
Okay, so let's get into some of the other modules then. And one of them is, we're going in order here. The next one is the effective sales techniques, which is a starter learning program. I want to get into that. Tell us a little bit about that. First, tell us a little about that, and then I'm gonna have some follow-ups, but let's go with that. What exactly is the effective sales techniques module? How does it work? What's the benefit?
So it's definitely video driven. We started the whole thing off with just, let's watch some solid videos. So I think it's 5 to 7 videos of different seasoned sales experts sharing antics, sharing stories, really good analogies about how do we connect with the customer or the client. How do we connect with them and find what they want? What are their opportunities? And the idea really is, if you solve those opportunities, they're going to come back for repeat sales. So that long-term relationship, that's really what we're starting off with here.
Okay, and let's get into why you selected starter specifically, because it's not, and I'm not trying to knock you here, just hang in there for a second, but you know, I'm not the kind of guy who back in the day would look through the newspaper and buy a car from some guy who placed an ad. So, I mean, I need some kind of, you know, certification that who I'm buying from is, you know, a solid person. So when I look at Sartor, when you looked at Sartor as a guy, again, who's an instructional designer, what did you see from them that you were like, okay, they belong in this because they're the best possible? What was the sales point on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Honestly, the first thing that really jumped out was it's very well produced video. It's super engaging. As soon as you watch it, you're just glued to it. You're like, oh, wow, this guy, he has an example of the amount of sales he says. He's in like the millions of sales, right? This guy's made it already. He knows what he's talking about. So I really want to punch the idea of the seasoned experts. These people know what they're doing. But also it was very tangible. It's very accessible because, again, it's conversational. It's social content. And they're just driving home this idea of this is the basics of sales. You have to get to know the customer. It has to be just shut your mouth, listen to them, find out their pain, and then, oh, I have these opportunities to solve that pain. Here's some options for you. So it was a really good kind of starter baseline. This is the most important thing, right? Start with active listening, find their opportunities.
And they're a quality education company, which I think is an important reason to be a part of what we're trying to do. Prescriptive selling, another part of the bundle. Get me into that. What exactly is prescriptive selling, the module? What are folks going to get out of it? Again, I'm assuming it's video heavy because that seems to be a trend with the new CEP. So fill me in. What exactly are you getting at this? And that one's done by Cultivate Advisors. So what exactly do folks get out of that one?
So looking at prescriptive selling, I liked this because if the first one, Sartor, was a little bit like watching maybe TV and just really planting some seeds, this was much more, okay, A, B, C, D. If you're an analytical person, you're really going to like this one. If you're more of I'm punctual, I got to get lists, I got to check all the boxes. Prescriptive selling was just, these are the tools that you really need. I'd still say it's a little bit maybe entry level sort of content, but just how do you set up goals and then how do you reach the goals is, I think, what I got out of prescriptive selling.
Great. And then let's get into the other two bundles, which focus on negotiation. One of those called negotiation skills. That bundle is by what is it? Chart Learning. Chart Learning Solutions.
Sure.
Let's get into that one first, and then we'll get into the other one, the negotiating outside of the sales bundle. So let's get into the negotiation sales bundle. What is that? Again, are we talking about video? What are folks going to get out of going through that part of the CEP process?
Sure. So the one we just talked about actually did have a lot of video, but what I liked about it is it was integrated into e-learning, right? So I'm not trying to change the topic on you real quick. But in the previous topic, we would have an expert come up. She'd have some video with some questions. And then depending on your answer, there'd be other video that kind of gives you feedback right away. So chart learning solutions, they are more just like strict e-learning. We're getting more into e-learning here, talking about negotiation. And what I like about chart learning solutions, we've actually selected a lot of their content. I was already very familiar with them because I've used them a lot with the skill set bundles, which I actually curated before CEP. And it's just solid content. They use Articulate Rise, which is rapid e-learning development. So it's just very clean. You just scroll down like a web page, right? It doesn't feel like an e-learning because you got that scroll bar. There's maybe a video, maybe some audio, maybe some reading, some supportive images, and then a quick activity, a drag and drop, or some questions. Then you hit the next button. So what I liked about Chart Learning Solutions is it's just really well built. The learner's engaged. There's always the balance of the modalities of income. So you don't need any of the cognitive overload because, again, for every little micro learning, you're watching something, you're listening to something, you're reading something, and then you're doing something.
So give me an idea on this one, this particular bundle. If I wanted to do it, and let's say it's we're recording this in July, but let's say there's a snowstorm in my town and I'm locked in my house over the weekend. How long will it take me? How many hours is it going to take me to get through that one particular bundle? Guesstimate.
It really depends. I would say between maybe 6 to 10 hours, depending on how really involved you are in it. I actually don't have that number right in front of me. I do have it somewhere. But yeah, ballpark, I'd say maybe 5 to 10 hours. Right. And that's going pretty easy. I'm sure you could knock it out much faster than that, but I wouldn't want to do that. Because I know that I wouldn't remember as much.
Exactly. That's a great point. But again, still easy. And then let's talk about this, the last one, which is negotiating outside of sales. This was actually, according to you, this was curated by NAED in-house. Explain that.
Yeah. So from my perspective, negotiation is a very important skill, right? And in my personal life, I've listened to a lot of audiobooks. I've read a lot on negotiation. And I value that skill in my personal life. So I was thinking, well, we have a lot of negotiation content that's very business related. And that I felt Chart Learning Solutions was a really good bundle around that. But I started to find other micro learnings, other modules that were negotiation like with your friends or with your family or negotiating when you're out to eat. And I think that maybe bringing that skill outside of work can really help people connect personally with the idea and then say, oh yeah, I already know how to do negotiation because I negotiate with my kids every night about how much TV they're going to watch, right? We're constantly negotiating. So I think just tapping into that logic or that experience really helps people connect maybe with themselves a little bit more on the topic.
So in addition to this great work, David, and I'm going to
thank
you while we're hitting record.
I appreciate that.
In addition to this great work that you're doing, you also put together a really great guide that we actually have on the NAED website. And so first of all, you explained it better than me. Explain to folks again how they can find the CEP page on NAED.org by going to the top and whatever, because I'm going to mess it up. And then I want to talk a little bit more how to find that guide. But what's the easiest way to find CEP on NAED.org?
So I actually wrote it down here, but yeah, to go on NAED.org, right? That's the easy thing. Then select education on the top right, and there's a drop down there, and then CEP is part of that drop down. There's also that you can preview the courses if you click on the more information button at the top of the CEP webpage. Yeah, when you get to the CEP page at the top, there's it says new, like in really big letters, and that's what if you click on that, there's a whole. I mean, you did like 8 pages of just extensive information. It's funny, I had to go back in, and I'm sorry to the web developer. She had to go in and redo that because I made all the links like internal facing because I thought I just wrote that for people at NAED. I thought they'd want to read it. And then you guys went ahead and put it on the webpage. I was like,
because it's too good. It's packed with information. So
yeah, well, none of the links work. So the good thing about that PDF is that if you click on things, it will kind of open up some examples of the video that I'm talking about. I think it has some of that Sartor learning where he's talking about a shoe with some money in it. So that's a little tease, right? You can go try and find that video now.
Exactly. It is great.
Well, thank you.
Available now. It's important
That's
to
right.
mention that the new CEP bundle, definitely worth getting, definitely being involved in. I cannot thank you enough, David, first of all, for, coming on the podcast. We love to have you on Distributed with TED Magazine.
This is great.
I'm gonna have you back again, that's for sure.
Awesome.
But also
Yeah.
the number of, again, pulling back the curtain a little bit, the number of hours that you took to make this and then make it available to our members is extraordinary, and should be complimented, because it just kind of shows a little bit of the behind the scenes, what kind of effort that the people that folks haven't met at NAED actually do to provide these courses. And we have dozens of courses, but to provide courses like this to improve their sales team or their counter folks or whatever it might happen to be. So thank you for, the amount of effort that you put into this. And thanks for taking a little bit of time to hop on the podcast. I can tell you that I appreciate it. And I know that our members appreciate it too. So thanks a ton. Really a great.
It really is my pleasure. This is why I'm involved in this. I wish I was helping people more than I am. But I'm just really happy that we got to really pull some quality content together. And I really feel like that manager guide is just going to start some conversations that are really going to drive some positive change in the world.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. And thanks again. And again, if folks want to learn more about the new CEP, again, you can go to the website, and at the top it says education, drop down CEP. You can do that. If you're like, hey, you know what? I just want to get in touch with member engagement, just email memberengagement@naed.org. They'll be happy to help you out and make sure that you get what you need to know about CEP. And if folks want to contact me, as always, two ways you can do that. One, you can give me a phone call, 314-812-5311, or send me an email, scosta, SCOSTA, @NAED.org. I want to thank David Kolmer again for hopping on the podcast. Until we get a chance to talk again, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody for listening to the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast.